Thank you so much for coming back to Syreta Talks. Oh, what an awesome week we've been having here on the show. We've had some awesome people. Abby Kaufman came in to talk about health and wellness. Ray Jatan was so nice to tell us about just how you can leverage your small business credit. But you know what's very dear to my heart? Is criminal justice reform and talking to people who have been through the struggle and who are making change, because everything is cyclical. And I want you to grab what you can and take it and let it do something in your life, you know? And I want to parallel that to a lot of people are like, oh, religion, I don't go to church. You don't have to go to church. It's inside of you. But I'm always like, if you go somewhere, take what you need, leave the rest behind. So from reentry conversations, we get so much. And I really feel like we are people who have a different perspective on life. So I want to introduce my honored guest, Tarik Green, and he is my brother in the struggle. So Tarik, I'm going to turn it over. Tell us about yourself. Tell us about some of the awesome things that you're doing. And, clearly we're going to, talk about ways we can help Tarik, because that's what it's all about. Helping each other. Hi, Tarik.
Hey, how are you doing, Syreta?
I'm
So
doing
yeah, my name
good.
is Tarik Green, and I really find it difficult to speak about myself in terms of any way that's different from any one of us who work in this field or other fields. Anything that people are doing to help others
Mm-hmm.
and to help themselves, especially, right?
Yeah.
It's just it's such a normal, I want to normalize it, and it is really a normal thing, and it has been a normal thing. I think what is not so normal is the fact that now so many of us are really taking advantage of social media in these streaming venues to be able to put it out in the atmosphere.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's so powerful and impactful that when people look at me, they don't assume or think, oh, she's been to prison 14 and a half years, that she was convicted of a violent crime, because that's how it should be. Because
Mm-hmm.
I am a human being. And in an instant, my life changed.
Right.
In an instant. So I just, and people think, oh, this would never happen to me. I thought the same. Okay. And as you see, Tarik is a beautiful human being. He's going to tell us about all those things. And it's not so much talking about you, it's talking about the impact and the ripple effect that you're having in this world. Tarik, we are human beings. And I'm glad you said normal, because I'm
Right.
just as normal as anybody else. I just have a past. And my
Mm-hmm.
past is Google search and you're going
Mm-hmm.
to see it. But I'm so much more than that. Tarik?
Yeah. But that's what brings to me, for me, that's what brings these topics right down front, right home for me. And it's what got me so engrossed in not just the fact that of having criminal justice involvement, of having been to prison over half my life.
Mhm.
But some of the things that I learned along the way is what carries me to this very day. Like I'll never forget being a youngster. And I'm from Brooklyn, born and raised in St. John's Hospital in Brooklyn, and lived
Mhm.
there all of my young life up into my adult life. And so, like some of the things I used to think when I was, young and on my way to school, or when I got a little older, on my way to the parks to play or hanging out.
Mhm.
I remember when I started hanging out and coming home early in the morning and seeing people on their way to work as I was coming from the clubs or doing whatever I was doing.
Mhm.
But I remember thinking that these people were, tax-paying citizens and good people. Like, this is the way we need to live our
Mhm.
life. These people have achieved, even if they weren't rich, which none of the people around me were actually rich, but they still were able to make it, right? And so I would
Yeah.
look at police officers and think that, they're doing a job that they're supposed to do. I would look at, prosecutors or lawyers and, judges in the court system, think that these people are doing a job. They get up, they go to work, they do. But it wasn't
Mhm.
until I started going through the system and seeing the corruption, the level of corruption from those quarters. And I was like, wow, here it
Yeah.
is. All of
Yeah.
these years, these people have us looking up to
Mhm.
people in positions, and they're not worthy of those positions in
Yeah,
many
the lawyers,
cases,
the
right?
judges, you
Right.
know?
So not to cast a horrible light on every single individual, which is what a lot of times we tend to do in our narrative, but
Mhm.
but it does have an effect on a particular, it
Subset.
has an effect on an office, right? So if things are happening from a particular office, then if an individual is doing it, we have this tendency to charge the entire office. This is coming from out of that office. And so, in seeing a lot of that, it just, what it really did though, is it taught me how to think outside the box, right? So I began to realize that for so many years, I was taught what to think. I was taught what to think. I think that, yeah, that's what began my journey of really learning how to think, as opposed to what people put in my mind,
Yeah, and we have to retrain ourselves. Yeah, because let me tell you, I had no problem with law enforcement. As a matter of fact, they saved my life a couple of times, because I was just in bad situations with, a bad individual. However, and I will give kudos to this. What you just said is so very true. That's like the same with the prison system. You want to, that somebody deserves to be there means that everybody deserves to be there. That's not true. And it's always unfortunate too when you have the bad cops, because then everybody, oh, they're all bad. That's not true. That one bad apple does spoil the bunch, and I always say this too. They don't want to put me on the news yet, but they always want to profile that person that spent 25 years in, and they don't know, none of his trauma or her trauma was ever addressed. She might be, or he might be institutionalized. So they go out there and they reoffend. That is front page news. That is the leading breaking news story of the evening. Exactly. However, me and you are news too. So that's just a touchback on what you said, and changing those narratives, because we all wanted to, emulate a lawyer or the judge, but not all of them are worthy of that. Now,
and those numbers can get, we could get a group of people to debate those numbers all day. Like, I know people who would say it's not a single good one in the bunch.
Yeah, that's biased though. That's biased.
It might be a little extreme, but that is only a reflection of how much corruption is present, right?
Now tell everybody where you're located.
So right now I'm in Rockland County, New York, which is, so you have in terms of New York, you would have New York City, and then going north, you would have Westchester County, and then Rockland County. So it's New York City, Westchester, Rockland. I'm in Rockland County. And it's a hell of a story too. The first time I had ever been to Rockland County in my entire life was in 2002. They had a mall in Rockland County called Palisades Mall, a huge mall. And I went there to get a laptop computer.
Okay.
The credit card that I used was not good. I didn't know it wasn't good at the time, although I did have an idea, but I didn't know it was.
You had an idea.
I mean, I knew that there was a possibility of it, but I was told that it was a legit card.
Tarik, the statute of limitation has passed. Okay, now go ahead.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And I did the time because I was arrested in there for that. And so just to give you some clarity on it, it was one card. A lot of times when people get arrested for credit card fraud, they have like a stack, right?
Yes.
So it was just a single card. So it was a 1-count indictment. And it was criminal possession of a forged instrument in the second degree, which is a Class D felony, which carries a maximum of 7 years. But I was arrested in Rockland County in this very liberal, very conservative town. Yeah, very conservative town. And I'm taken through the court system, which was just crazy. I mean, the things that I was seeing was so outdated. It was almost like going back to Neanderthal times. It's what it seemed like. And it was horrible.
Now, are you talking about conditions?
The conditions, the conditions.
I know.
The conditions in terms of arrest and, the procedure you go through to finally get to the judge. And then when you get to the judge and then being incarcerated in the county jail.
On a Class D felony, how long were you there?
So I was sentenced to 15 years to life on that Class D felony in Rockland County. But again, to give you some background on it, as soon as I seen what was going on, I decided I'm going to start reading law because I'm not trusting a single one of these lawyers to do anything with me. In fact, at one stage of the procedure, the prosecutor said to me, "Listen, you've already served over 14 years in prison. Like, seriously, like, take the plea." And I was
And
like,
what was
take
the
the
plea?
plea.
The
The
plea
plea,
was
yeah, they was offering me 3 years on a plea deal, right?
so clearly he has no context, and that's another thing in the sentencing structure. They will hand out 10, 15 years, like, oh, you only got 15 years. And here's the thing, like, we watch TV and we're like, he only got one day away from your family is a lot. And let me
It's a
tell you,
lot.
if you put an average person into prison for 1 month, they'd be probably trying to kill themselves.
That's 100%
Okay.
right.
So when you say it's only 3 years, the individual that's telling you it's only 3 years is probably been locked in this mode of thinking where anything less than 10 or 10 years, oh, you did good. That's not doing good.
But
That's
a
not
lot of
doing
that
good at
also
all.
does come from the fact that they have no conscience or feelings when they look at us in those courts. They
True.
automatically, in many cases, automatically just have us as guilty, whether we actually did something or not. I have had police officers anyway, and lawyers say to me, "Well, think about all the times you did
You
something
got
and got
away.
away with it, so this is for that." Like, they actually really think and believe
Mhm.
that. But then there's another thing, and I'm really big on this. I'm really big on brothers, men and women, brothers and sisters that come that are caught on social media, or not really caught. They say it out loud and they say it consciously. Yo,
Yeah.
I could do that. 3 years ain't nothing. I could do that and come back and still be, young enough to do X, Y, Z, or whatever they might say. If they got money put away, I could come back in 3 years is nothing. I could do that and come back. I still got, 10 bands.
Yeah, yeah, and
Let me
and
stop.
once more, let me tell you, I just had a whole conversation about unrealistic expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Unrealistic expectations. And I used to tell people when I was incarcerated, when you get out, you act like you just came to this country with the clothes on your back, and you got to make it happen somehow. Because people come here and they make it happen. You've got to put in the work. You cannot have unrealistic expectations that, oh, I'm just going to touch down. I'm going to be pushing a brand new whip. I'm going to have a brand new car or a brand new house. All these things that you really have to put forth work and effort. So when someone's perpetuating that through the atmosphere, and that's like, I had a conversation with my son this morning. My son's 26 years old. And I was telling him, this new artist that I found. And he was like, well, Future just dropped an album with Metro Boomin. And I said, I'm really trying to stay away from selling drugs, using drugs, and murder music right now. I'm trying to junk in, junk out.
Mm-hmm.
However, when you see somebody on social media like, hey, I can get this 3 years and I'm gonna still come out and push this, Range Rover and have three, that's not realistic. That's
Right.
not realistic. And
Right.
here's another term that a lot of people don't know. Don't soup yourself up for that. Don't
Mm-hmm.
just, oh, this is gonna happen. That's not how that happens. Now let me
Right.
turn it right back over to you now that I've addressed unrealistic expectations, and that's a whole nother show.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And so anyway, I decided I was going to study and do this thing
Yeah.
myself, which does not happen in this county. It does
No.
not happen, right? And so I began studying and found that I liked reading and studying. Well, I was always an A student. I've never been
Yeah.
anything other than an A student. In fact, I always tell the story when I did drop out of school in the 10th grade. I was really bored of school. I mean, I didn't have
Mhm.
problems or issues or anything like that. It was just boring. I didn't have to read or study for tests. I could take a test and even if I got like an 89, 90, it was without studying anything, right? But
Wow.
I think that might have happened once or twice. My tests was like 99s and 98, 99, 100. So,
Nice.
it was just like, man, whatever. But when I got there and I started reading law books,
Hmm.
that opened up a whole nother portal of thinking for me. Because when you start reading the law, you start really seeing yourself as a black man or as a black woman, if you were in there reading in the women's prisons, you start seeing yourself in relation to our history.
Yeah.
And you start making these connections that you didn't even really know it. You know it, but on some unconscious level, right? Because when you start reading law, you start reading about cases of people who escaped slavery from one town and went to another town and was captured and went to court and said, yeah, like you don't have right as a Negro, as they used to, term it back then, you don't have the right to escape from freedom. You have to be released into it. Right. And so I was reading these things and I'm like, man, this was the law. And the law never really changed per se. It did it like what's the word I'm looking for here? It morphed into
it metastasized into something bigger, like a cancer. Cancer. And let me tell you this, a lot of people don't know that there is the prison industrial complex. So as that number that they assign you, you are earning money for this huge underworld system. And it's really not underworld. It's right in your face. You just really don't pay attention to it. That's right. Like I said, let's just bring it on back to, this is a word I'm trying to put out in the atmosphere. I want my son to start using. Let's harken back to the conversation where we were talking about how the system is set up to keep you there, how they're already ready for you to go to jail. Let's just talk about the money that is funneled through that. And because we don't take the time to see that this could happen to anybody, or take the time to realize that, hey, they're doing me wrong. And it's more than Black people, it's white people too, because guess what they have in common? They're poor. So you can be poor and you can get lost in the system and they're going to throw you some time and your lawyer is going to tell you, you should take the plea. So therefore, these books that you're studying about being enslaved and how you can go somewhere, you're enslaved to that probation officer. You're enslaved to that parole officer. And they will send you back just as quick as you came out. Yeah.
No, that's 100% correct. And you know, it's so many tentacles, right, that comes out of our root problem, man. It's that we focus so much on the tentacles that sometimes we forget about the root problem. Because the honest truth is that prison and the whole prison industrial complex is the tentacle. It's just you could cut that off completely. You could abolish prisons in this country, and we would still have the same root problem that we have that led to the prisons, the creation of the prison system anyway.
And what would you identify that as? Right? What would you identify?
Let's come around to that. Let's come around to that.
That's a whole other show,
right? Yeah. Let me say, all right. That was one of the things about this, you know, and I love the push for closed Rikers, right? And I kind of attribute that to Glenn Martin. You know, that he started that push when he was with Just Leadership, I believe, the closed Rikers. And it was a huge thing. It was a beautiful concept. And I still like the concept of closed Rikers. However, the reality of the matter is Rikers Island is just a set of buildings. It's just brick and mortar, right? The building itself never did anything to anyone. It never locked nobody in there. It never brought nobody in there, and it never let nobody out, right? So when you say close Rikers, what you're saying is let's close those buildings. But if you do that, and you take the people who the administrators, if you take the administrators that's in the current Rikers Island, and you put them in another Rikers Island on the moon, you're gonna have the same set of circumstances you had in the Rikers Island that was right here.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Shutting down a facility doesn't change the mindset. It doesn't change the way of thinking. It doesn't change the fact that there is money churning from warehoused individuals, from other human beings. And just like, and a lot of times you're set up for failure. And being a minority, being a woman, being poor, then you are easily victimized.
Right.
Easily victimized just by the tentacle. And if that tentacle gets cut off, trust me, what are there, 7 more to take its place?
It's more like 700 more, and they're building more every day. So those are just some of the things that would, you know, and these are not new developments for me mentally, right? These are things that was already in me when I started studying law. So, but then, the other thing is that, being from Brooklyn, born and raised in Brooklyn, and being in the streets, I really didn't care. I didn't have fear of these people, right? I didn't want to go to prison, of course. So anytime you see the police say halt, you're gonna run, right? Because you don't want to go, especially if you're doing dirt. And when I was in the streets, of course, I was doing dirt. So my running wasn't for fear. It was I didn't want to go to prison, right? But when I got there, and it was time for me to stand up, and this is something that brothers that's watching this, right? A lot of brothers that's watching this show will be able to relate and understand what I'm saying. Many of us, when we're in the streets, we can articulate ourselves the way you and I are doing right now with no problem. But the vast majority of us, when we was arrested and we was in our young teens or in our late teens, in our early 20s, many of us, when we got inside that courtroom, could not articulate ourselves. We would freeze up. We would hear the prosecutor saying something about the facts of the case that wasn't factual. In fact, it wasn't true at all. And we wouldn't say anything. And those among us who would speak up and say something, even though the judge and the prosecutor, everybody was saying, shut up, don't talk in here, or whatever. And your lawyer, of course, is always saying, yo, don't say anything. Right? Yeah. Many of us would speak up anyway because we didn't fit and we knew what was happening wasn't just. It wasn't right. And so we would speak up for it, right? That's those of us who were raised in a way that we weren't afraid to express ourselves and advocate.
Absolutely. But and wait, let me ask you this. The people that express themselves and stand up and take an active part in their defense, they get the most time. Because they would you agree? And let me tell you why. Because they want you to be the example for all the people who were in your pod or your module and that saw you going up to court and you said, no, I'm gonna fight this. No, I'm gonna take this to trial. They want you to be the example that you're gonna get more time at trial. They don't want you to beat that case and they want you to take that plea and it's a setup from the time you were in handcuffs.
100% right. And it was never looked at as you standing up and advocating for yourself. It was always looked at as you being disruptive in court and being uncontrollable, having no respect for authority and things like that. That's the way they package, they frame that if you spoke up for yourself. So yeah.
And if you don't speak up, and most of the time it's out of fear because you've been told if you say anything, if you go against the grain, if you do anything outside of what is the norm, we're going to make sure you get that time too.
That's right.
So every step of the way you are beaten down. And, I thought to myself after I got sentenced, I'd already been in the county jail for almost 3 years. And that was one of the reasons my judge said, he said, this has just went on and on and on. It wasn't me because clearly my lawyer wasn't fighting for me. It's just I had a good case. So, and I'm sure, if you have a case that, hey, it's kind of hands down, they'll hit you with that time and send you to prison. Yeah. So I'd been there almost 2.5 years. And I was thinking to myself when I got sentenced, I didn't fight hard enough for me. I was scared. I didn't know that I was already set up for failure. And the more that I started... Yes. And the more that I started to read into it, and I already knew as soon as this lawyer had come on, that was not my lawyer. He did not have my best interest at heart. Right. And then, it was basically like right before I got sentenced, he presented evidence in the holding cell against me by friends of my victim that had written statements. As I'm asking, why am I not getting self-defense? Then you have statements against me at this moment. Yeah. I should have fought harder for myself, but guess what? I had a lot of time to think about how I should have fought harder for myself. But in that moment, I had no idea of what I was up against.
Yeah, go ahead, no question about that. And it's not just you. And it's not just you. I'm telling you that I know strong men who could not advocate for themselves, but not because it was because they were never taught from a young place that it's okay to do that. That it's not disrespectful or it's not a disregard for authority to advocate for yourself. Which is why so many people find themselves in situations and they say things like, I don't know what to do. If you're being harmed or if you're in a place that's uncomfortable, you got to know what to do. You have to be able to get that out and speak to it and deal with it. So that's exactly what happened. I continued to study, Syreta, and listen, I was really good. right? And I
Yeah.
started feeling. And what made me know at one point that I was good with this is because I was sitting we was in court one day and the judge quoted the statute, except he misquoted it. He said it wrong. And neither the judge nor I had books. In fact, I was still handcuffed in front of the judge. And so
Okay.
neither one of us had a book. And so, but I knew it. I knew that law because I had been studying for real, for real. And when he quoted,
Yes.
I said, Your Honor, with all due respect to the court, that's not the law. And that's why you're ruling like this, because you think that the statute states this. And so he gave like a chuckle, like, what are you talking about? What do you know? And I quoted the law verbatim. And I asked that the stenographer take it down. Take down what I say so it don't get misconstrued and later on. And I said, the statute states blah, 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 blah. And so he said, no, that's not correct. And that's why I'm ruling like this, because you're wrong. And I said, Your Honor, it's in the book. I said, it's in the book. We can take like a 2-second recess and get it, and we can see it's in the book. So he said, you know what? That's what we'll do. He said, we'll take a short recess. We'll come right back.
Yay.
Yeah. So they left. And when he came back, he said, wow, I'm really impressed. He said, the defendant was correct that the law, he said, I did misquote. He said, however, my ruling stays the same.
Oh, man.
You know what I'm saying? So, but it was okay with me because at that point I knew that he was not nearly as aware as he thought he was. I knew that they was ruling on my case wrong. And I had been reading to know that these were issues that call for a reversal, or automatic reversal. So
Yes. Let's fast forward. Fast forward. You did get your sentence overturned.
Oh, I did. I definitely did.
And so let me just point this out to the audience. The whole conversation has basically, let's just break down the meat and the potatoes, okay? The meat is this. You cannot always believe what you see, and you cannot always believe that someone's going to be on your side just because of the position that they're in. The judge is supposed to weigh these scales, but when those scales are going in a direction that might favor you, that's not to say that the ruling will go in a direction that will favor you. Now, I'll turn it right back over because that is so powerful. This man told them you are not reading this right. And at the same time, kudos to you, inmate number 1209553. Go ahead and do this time.
100%.
And that was my number. That was my number.
Yeah.
1209553. But guess what? Yeah. There's so much more to me. I'll never be that number.
That's right. And I say that all the time. But so anyway, yeah, I did. I studied and I kept studying. I became a paralegal during the course of my sentence, which I was sentenced to 15 to life under the recidivism law. It's not the recidivist. I forgot the name.
3 strikes.
The persistent statute. Yes.
Okay. Prior and persistent.
Yeah. So they sentenced me under that and gave me life. And I argued that I'm not a persistent. That the most you could have done was giving me the max, which would have been 3.5%. But he sentenced me to 15 to life, and I went in and became a paralegal
over a credit card,
over a non-violent crime.
Yeah,
but his anger was in me representing myself. He hated that because he knew that people inside the jail was actually seeing me represent myself.
That's right. Now, Tarik, let me tell you this. This has been an excellent interview, but I want to stop you right there representing yourself so we can pick this up. And I hope you have time next week.
Yep, I definitely do.
Let me tell you this. Tarik and a lot of other people that we've seen, they're going to come back, okay? And they're going to expound on what they have to teach us, what we can learn from. And these are perspectives that we all need to hear. Tarik, I'm so grateful and thankful you were able to come on today. Yes. And I want everybody that listens to Syreta Talks to know that everything that I talk about comes from this place, from that place, from places that I never would have been. And the whole point is change the world. You change the system, you can change the world. Tarik, anything you want to leave us with?
Let me just hear, I'll come back. When we come back, we'll start from now for people that want to reach out. Definitely, I'm on LinkedIn under the same name, Tarik Green, or my agency name, which is the Reentry Institute of America. You can reach out to any one of those pages and get me. But definitely, I want to come back and some serious points I want to make for you and to the audience, though.
Oh, this is a series.
Yes,
This
yes,
is a
yes.
series. Yeah,
Yeah.
because now we have someone who is going to tell us about how the system is broken, and then we got to come back so we can